Welcome to Transmissions Alt Mode, where we look at the latest comics and other media featuring the Transformers. In this episode, we return to the humans of the Energon Universe with a review of Skybound G.I. Joe number 2. Today is Friday, December 20th, 2024, and this is episode 421 of Transmissions Alt Mode.
Welcome to Transmissions Alt Mode, the podcast that didn't realize until now that laser blasts can kill you. I'm your host Charles, aka Big C, and I'm joined by the excellent Transmissions team. Jeremy, aka Yakko.
Hey, how's it going?
And Daryl, the Cybertronian Beast.
Pew! Let's talk Transformers.
As always, we start the show by thanking our Donatreons, those lovely people who support us on Patreon and PayPal. Thank you all so much for continuing to help us out and keep the show going. We'd like to give a special shout out to our returning Donatreon, Emmers, who just signed up for another run. Thank you, Emmers, for supporting us again, and all the support in the past as well. You're awesome. Emmers is a friend of the show. We've known her for a long time. Hung out with her at TFCon Baltimore just last month. So it was great to see her again. I got to go see Transformers 1 with her and Jimmers. So that was cool earlier in the year. So Emmers, thank you. Welcome back. Great to have you. And of course, Emmers and everyone who's on the Transmissions Patreon as a Donatron gets some perks. That includes access to some bonus shows, like our bonus show We Like Big Bots, done by Daryl and Dr. Pants, where they go through all the big bots in their collection. They pick a bot, all the versions of that character they have. They show them off, talk about them. It's a good time. You can see all the episodes of We Like Big Bots on our Patreon page, and got, I think, 14 episodes out right now. More coming in 2025, maybe. I'm not even going to ask about 2024.
14 is more. Plenty.
No, you must make more.
We'll see. We'll talk about it. But 2025 is a lot of time, so maybe.
Okay. We've also got our Transformers Live Play RPG podcast, Empire of Rust, and this week was episode 130, Throw Magnum from the Train. And that's available at transmissionspodcast.com/rust. And next week is we've got a side story bonus version episode of Empire of Rust. So not episode 131 is going to be a little bit later on. But this week, or I'd say in 2 weeks, we'll have a special episode called Tales from the Forge. And it's going to be some backstory information for the characters, the player characters. And that will be out on December 30th. So right before New Year's. So look forward to that. And there will not be a bonus version of that. So it'll just be coming out on the regular main feed on December 30th. So, but for right now, you've got episode 130 to listen to. And that's at transmissionspodcast.com/rust. We've still got copies of our Transformers number 1 from Skybound that we commissioned with the cover art by EJ Sue. You can pick that up at our website, transmissionspodcast.com/comic. Make great stocking stuffers if you want to pick one up before Christmas. If you get your orders in this week, I can probably get them to you before Christmas. So, if there's a Transformers fan in your life or yourself who's looking for an additional copy of this comic, there are lots of variants of this comic out there, but none that were commissioned by a podcast except this one. So it's pretty rare, pretty unique. All right. And lastly, we've got our Toy Hacks promo code. You can use that code HOLIBOTS, HOLIBOTS. Use that code at toyhacks.com. Checkout, you will get 15% off all your orders at toyhacks.com. Use that code as many times as you like before the end of December, and it will give you 15% off everything at toyhacks.com. So use that code Hollybots, HOLIBOTS. All right, now let's move on with the rest of the show. We've got a comic to review.
All right, and we are reviewing G.I. Joe #1. This is written by
Number 2.
Sorry, G.I. Joe #2. This is written by Joshua Williamson. Art is by Tom Riley. Colors by Jordi Belair. Letters by Russ Wooten. And editor is Ben Abernathy. And the story begins where the last one ended, as the battle for the Energon shard is continuing. CoverGirl is looking on in horror at Rock and Roll's body. Mercer, holding Clutch by his neck in one hand, points his gun at her and tells her to load the Energon tech for them because he'd hate to shoot a woman in the face. However, they're broken up by someone shooting from outside the building. It's Duke in a captured Cobra helicopter, and he's firing on Mercer to free his teammates. Mercer grumbles about Duke and then orders his forces to return fire. And they damage the chopper, but then Duke jumps free and right onto Mercer. Elsewhere, Cobra Commander and Destro are monitoring the fight while examining a squad of Bat troopers. Destro says that they need to make sure that they get the shard or this will be a costly failure. Cobra Commander is confident and sure that this will also be sending a message, and he's got some of his personal guards on the way to help. Back in the fight, Duke punches the visor out of Mercer's helmet. When he sees Mercer's face, he realizes that Mercer was the head of security for Mars Industries. But just then, he's distracted by a laser blast, and he looks up at some new female Cobra troopers that have just arrived. They're shooting the wounded, both Joe and Cobra, and Mercer takes advantage and gets Duke in a headlock as he says that that's their role. They're the Valkyries, and they're sending the wounded to Valhalla. Just as one is about to shoot Stalker, her weapon fails, and then the Baroness is able to take advantage and take her out with a kick. She says Duke needs to get his head in the game and finish the mission, but CoverGirl says that they need to take care of their people and retreat. While this happens, Cobra grabs the shard, but Clutch is nearby, and he gets a Cobra rifle and fires through the soldiers. Seeing a risk of losing this and having their tech captured, Cobra Commander activates a hidden feature that he had installed behind Destro's back, and the weapons start glowing and overheating. Clutch is able to toss his, but the Cobra soldiers holding theirs get caught as all the guns blow up. Mercer and the remaining forces take advantage of this, and they escape with the shard, while Duke and the surviving Joes recover back at the pit. Rock and Roll has died, while Stalker survived and is in surgery. CoverGirl has burns all over her arms from the lasers, and Clutch is missing, presumed dead. Duke wants to get back out there and tells General Hawk that he recognized Mercer. Hawk says that they can't just go and attack a foreign diplomat's home, and Baroness says that they need to heal and not fight when they're angry. A new voice says Duke just doesn't know how to take a punch. If you want to win, that's the first thing you need to learn. Hawk introduces Guerrero Lacaza, aka Risk, a CIA operative and cage fighter. Duke is upset at Hawk bringing in someone without talking with him first, and Risk tells him that he needs to calm down. Losing is never easy, and then he calls Rock and Roll heavy metal, but sets Duke off, and Risk gets a punch in the face for it. Then the two start fighting. In Springfield, Mercer's chopper arrives with the Energon shard. Destro is still wondering where the technology is from and how it can be a weapon. But all Cobra Commander says is that it's from before the time that they were together. Then they start talking about the future plans. Dr. Archibald Monev has created a device called the Brainwave Scanner, and Cobra plans to capture both of them. The problem is that the scanner is in a secure lockup while Dr. Monev is being questioned by Congress. Destro suggests that two teams go and capture them. And walking away, a Cobra soldier is complaining about his helmet being too tight. And as soon as he's out of view, he removes it to reveal that he's Clutch, and he's disguised himself as a Cobra soldier to escape. Now he's got to figure out what he's just gotten himself into. So that is summary of the book. Very, very action heavy. I felt like the action was really good. Art was really good. Story was pretty easy to follow from start to finish. Although I had forgotten about Risk. Like I had to go back and realize he was the guy that was introduced in the first issue. There was like a couple of pages of like this guy, and we're like, who is he? And that's who he is. He's a new character created for G.I. Joe for this series. But I thought this was really brutal. The Valkyrie stuff, shooting all the wounded, that was unexpected to me. I think just having a competent Cobra commander is like unexpected, but I appreciate how they're setting up. You know, he's a real threat in this universe. And Daryl, we did have a single Transformer image in here when Cobra Commander mentions that it's like from the time before him, and you see an image of an armless Megatron behind him. So there you go. But I don't know. I enjoyed the book. It was not as frustrating to me as the Transformers book we talked about last week, where it was just like bits and pieces. There's like so many moving things. Here, there's like just a small number of moving parts and plot lines you got to worry about. But it is issue 2, so they are still setting things up. But I feel like this was an enjoyable thing, and we're setting up Energon in here. You know, it's going to be important to their weapons. So, Daryl, what were your thoughts on the book?
Well, I have, a couple thoughts. One, the single panel of Megatron behind Cobra Commander, unnamed, unacknowledged, does not make it better.
It was a good drawing of Megatron, though.
Was it? It's you can definitely tell it's Megatron, but his chest makes him look like Soundwave. So, and then the Decepticon logo in the middle of it is not like it's not angled right. So I'm going to be picky on it because I can. It's just wrong. Anyway, the story in and of itself is fine. The battle at the beginning is taking over from or picking up right where the last one left off. I enjoy it when a book does that. That way I can, it's for the trade, right? You can definitely tell it's written for the trade, and then they just kind of, it seamlessly goes one right into the other. And the image of rock and roll just blown to hell on the ground there is absolutely brutal. So, you can definitely see that he's dead, unless, of course, they hit no vital organs and they bring him back as like a RoboCop type deal, which would be
he's awesome. Like on fire.
Yeah. Yeah. So, maybe like nothing hit his head. So maybe he's a RoboCop in the future. They bring him back as a RoboCop. I could totally get behind that.
A drop of Energon will make him this hybrid.
Yeah. Like Duke finds or recognizes some guy that he punches in the face as somebody that he worked with before. Excuse me.
It was from the Duke miniseries.
Oh, was it?
He's Destro's head of security.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So there you go. Okay. Well, I'm still hoping this guy gets turned into a RoboCop. I don't remember where Duke gets the Cobra chopper from, but it's obviously going to be in issue 1. So I do like I like the Valkyrie stuff, although I want to know whether they travel with the Cobra troopers and just come in at the end. Like do they have any other use, or just to come in and put down the wounded? Is that like what else do this team of Valkyries do? You know, I find it's an interesting concept for a evil organization to have a team of people to come in and put down the wounded, which is it's evil, but it's badass. And to make them all women is even is even more badass, because generally women are more compassionate, and these women have no compassion whatsoever, which makes them super badass. So then I get it. That, I mean, it's a nice battle. Everything's kind of gone crazy, but I do like how the book kind of ends with everybody just like G.I. Joe got their asses handed to them, which is great. They're just kind of picking up the pieces, but you do see that Clutch kind of made it out. So I'm always happy to continue a story where one of the good guys finds himself behind enemy lines, and he's bitten off more than he can chew, because that's always kind of a fun story. But I mean, I don't know, I'm not into the book, so other than that, it's an okay read. There's been no mention of any Transformers here, other than what Cobra Commander has alluded to. So I would like them to at least give some update on what timeline we're in here, like what's going on.
It would be nice to know.
Is the ongoing.
Yeah, it'd be nice to know like where this sits in the timeline of the other books.
Yeah,
you would think we got this is like before a shard of Cybertron breaks off.
Yeah, so we the closest thing we got was that image of Optimus, laying waste when he was fighting on the bridge, right? Like that was the only thing we got as kind of a, let's put this in some kind of timeline. But yeah, I'd like them to kind of establish like, okay, this just happened. Like in the Transformers book, we've got Bruticus has merged. Like that's now front page news on every single continent, right? Like,
well, now a whole city destroyed.
I think Tacoma, Washington being destroyed is front page news on every single continent.
No. And like I said, a slice of a planet is in the ocean now.
Yeah.
Well, we know G.I. Joe #1 takes place after Transformers 12, because that's when the slice of the planet landed in the ocean, and the whole point of this was recovering a piece of that technology. So at the very minimum, we know it's after Transformers 12. We don't know if it's after when Tacoma was on fire, but I imagine they'll reference that at some point to timestamp that, because I'm sure the G.I. Joe team will be like, "Hey, giant robots are attacking Tacoma, Washington. This is our whole deal was to deal with the giant robots, so that's probably something we should worry about."
Cities get destroyed all the time, and nobody seems to care.
Do they?
There are 2 wars going on right now, Charles, and there are cities being destroyed right now, and nobody seems to care. So I'm just going to tell you, if there was a giant robot out there, they would that would get your attention.
Are the cities being destroyed by giant robots?
No, that's the point, is that if a city got destroyed, I don't think it would matter. But if a giant robot did it, that would change the game.
Okay, but I mean, all right, Daryl. I'm not going to argue with you, but there's a difference between like a conventional war zone and then a random city somewhere in the world. Just like if Toronto just got flattened next week, I think it would be front page news. If Berlin just got stomped on, it would be front page news, regardless of what happened.
Mhm.
It's not like, cities in war zones get destroyed. Yes, that's true. But, we know where the war zones are. They don't just pop up randomly.
Big
right.
robots do.
All right. Well, Charles, what were your thoughts on the book?
Actually, I really enjoyed this one. I thought this was a really good story. It was action heavy. It was, a nice kind of complete uh, story that had it had adversity for the GI Joe team. They come out, at the end really in bad shape. Cobra wins and sets up things for the next issue or whatever. I thought it was really well done. I liked like the stakes. You see, we've got stakes now since the GI Joe characters can die with rock and roll. He's pretty clearly dead. And clutch behind enemy lines, like Daryl said. I think that's a cool setting up for cool stuff for next stories. The Valkyries was interesting to me, but I'm like, you do you really need to dedicate an entire group of troops to just murdering the wounded? I mean, don't you need troops like to really deal with the threats of actual combatants? I mean,
Right.
it seems like a waste of resources.
And then they were all taken out when their guns exploded too.
Yeah, that's not great either.
Were they killed or just like?
Yeah, I mean, you saw the whole floor of the building basically blew up.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe, yeah, it's. But I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I don't know why you need a group of all female soldiers, but
Toys.
why they're not just integrated with the regular with with all the soldiers? I don't know. But yeah, it was cool. It was interesting. I think that's also a new concept for GI Joe. Like they did the Valkyrie toys were just released a couple months ago, and they were like designed for the Skybound comics. So at least I was looking it
Yeah.
up online just as
Yeah, it looks
as we
like
were
there
talking.
were just generic female troopers in the past, like in the show, but the term Valkyrie, I think, is new. I saw that
Yeah.
classified series figure.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I wonder if they are like mind controlled, because you see like that one shot of that one with her eye and like almost no pupil. I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's something more there than meets the eye.
And also one thing that I was not aware of, I looked this up as well because I didn't know anything about this, but Archibald Monev is a character from GI Joe past, and because Monev is Venom backwards, so this is Dr. Venom. And he is a previous GI Joe character, and the brainwave scanner is a previous thing that he invented in previous GI Joe stories. So they are introducing Dr. Venom in GI Joe very soon, and looks like he's going to have similar backstory and will probably be recruited by Cobra. So I thought it might have been Dr. Mindbender since it was a brainwave scanner, but
Yeah.
wrong doctor, I guess.
When I saw Archibald, I went to Archiville in my brain before I realized, because that would be a nice crossover. Get some of the
Yeah.
mad scientists from one franchise in the other franchise's story.
Is it not Archibald?
It could be.
He's saying
Probably.
Archibald, but I think it's Archibald.
Reading is
Sure.
hard. Anyway, well, I guess that will wrap up our review, and we will continue to torture Daryl with these Energon Universe comics. And, looking forward to seeing what's coming up next.
All right. Well, let's continue on with the show with some convention news.
All right, and we got a bunch of convention news this week. TFCon Los Angeles will be March 9th or 7th through 9th, 2025. But they've announced a bunch of artists and voice actors that will be in attendance. So first up, we've got Jack Lawrence, artist on Lost Light, that you would have known him from, and then the Wreckers Tread and Circuits as well for IDW. He'll be in attendance. Next up, we've got friend of the show, Casey Kohler, will be there. Casey's a renowned cover artist for Transformers. Has done lots of covers on the More Than Meets the Eye books, as well as did a mini series himself. I think it was an Ironhide is what he did. So yeah, he's a really great guy to chat with as well. Very talented artist. Next up, some guy named Alex Milne will be there. A good guy, and yeah, he's pretty talented himself. Expect to find that Alex has created more robo erotica.
They never mentioned that in the blurb about him.
I know, it's crazy. He's getting more and more known for his robo erotica. But yeah, and he sells the originals there. So if you are interested in some of that kind of stuff, if that's your kink, check out his table. Next up, Evan Michael Lee, who was the voice of Jazz in Transformers 1, will be in attendance. So that's kind of cool. I think
he also did that session, that original thing with the voice actors. He was Jazz.
Yeah.
Too.
And I believe he's going over to TF Nation as well, or has just been to TF Nation. So yeah, so if you want to meet Evan Michael Lee, check it out.
Yeah, we announced to TF Nation last week that he's going for 2025.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, this guy's been around for a bit. Michael Bell will be attending as well. He's just been he's a G1 voice actor for Sideswipe, Prowl, Swoop, Bombshell, and a bunch of other stuff. He was in attendance in Baltimore, and he was rocking his Smurf jacket, his Smurf crew jacket.
I think that's his convention attire is that jacket.
It's the most baller thing I've ever seen. The guy's got a Smurf coat, and it's a crew jacket from when he was on the Smurfs. It's so freaking awesome, man. It's sweet. So yeah, he'll be there, and yeah, get him to sign something. He's the best. And lastly, we've got another really kick-ass voice actor, Dan Gilvezan, who's been on our show as well. And he's, I mean, obviously we know him as Bumblebee. He was also the voice of Goldbug, Hotspot, Snapdragon. They're all G1 characters. He was also the voice of Spider-Man in Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends back in the day. I mean, they're almost the same voice, him and Bumblebee. But yeah, he's a really good guy to chat with as well. And so yeah, some really great G1 voice actors are going to be there, as well as some amazing artists that are on the Transformers, or were on the Transformers books when it was IDWs.
Cool. Before we move on, we might get some comments because I think we did make a mistake. The voice of Jazz for that G1 table read was actually Arif S. Kinchin, who was the voice of Robots in Disguise Jazz from 2015.
I didn't make that mistake.
I mean, that can be all fixed in the edit.
But yeah, so Evan Michael Lee and Arif S. Kinchin are not the same person.
I just knew there was a Jazz voice actor that did that G1 thing and other Jazz and other things. Sorry.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Transmission Podcast regrets their mistake.
All right. Well, that takes us to the end of this episode of Transmissions Alt Mode. So if you guys are still reading the Energon Universe comics, write in and let us know what you thought of this latest issue of G.I. Joe #2. Not enough Transformers in it? Probably not. But yeah, I think we'll continue on. Hopefully, I think Void Rivals will be out next week, so we'll have a chance to review that, and then we'll continue on. So, of course, at the end of every episode of Transmissions and Transmissions Alt Mode, we give a shout out to our Masterpiece Donatrons. These are the folks who continue to support the podcast at our highest level on Patreon, and that's why they get a mention in every episode. So thank you once again to John 4X11 Good and Steve C. You guys are awesome. We really appreciate it. And that's it. Thanks, everyone, for watching and listening this week. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Later.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Transmissions. If you'd like to join the conversation, travel to our Discord channel at transmissionspodcast.com/Discord. Want some cool transmission swag? Feast your eyes on our transmissions gear at transmissionspodcast.com/shop. If you'd like to support our podcast, go to transmissionspodcast.com/support or tell your friends about our show. We'll see you next time.